Kate Tucker. I'm here with Root and Vine for week 3 of Reasons to Hope. How's it going? How's your daily 5 going? How's your gratitude journal, your weekly reasons? I would love to hear from you, so please just leave comments in this video or in our weekly post on Mondays. On Instagram, you can also tweet at Root and Vine News. And I just want to hear what's giving you reason to hope. How are you finding the daily gratitude practice? If I'm being completely honest, I am having a bit of a struggle this week. This has been a hard week. I'm going through some personal transitions in my life, and then, of course, paying attention to what's happening in our country and in the rest of the world. So I totally spaced yesterday. I didn't even write my daily 5, but I got back on track today. And I do think that, like we talked about last week, it's slowly training my brain to follow my heart. And I know that my heart is full of gratitude when it really comes down to it. So let me know how it's going with you. This week, I wanted to talk about some things that I was working through in my journal this morning. And because I'm feeling a lot of different emotions, I'm going to read to you some of that, just so that I know that I'm clear in what I'm bringing you. So, throughout my life, I've always had hope. I've been grateful to always have hope, but it doesn't mean that I always feel hopeful. I don't know about you if you can relate to that, but in the bottom of the year, in the depths of winter, in the heart of this pandemic, it's hard to hold on to hope. And I want to be really clear when we're doing this practice of finding reasons to hope that this isn't just lip service or some sort of optimistic ignoring of what's really happening in the world. So this is a real visceral hope that underlies everything. So today, as we honor the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who managed to carve a tunnel of hope out of a mountain of despair, which were the words he wrote so eloquently from a jail cell in Birmingham. He said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." And so today, as we stop and consider the life of Dr. King, and we consider his mission and his work and his embodiment of the prophet Micah's mandate, he has shown you, O people, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. It's been 52 years since the healing work of Dr. King was stopped with one fatal gunshot. And we still have so far to go. In King's last words from the speech he gave in Memphis just a few hours before he was assassinated, he recognized that, like Moses, he wouldn't get to cross over, and he might not get to see the reason for his hope made manifest in the world today. But he held on to it. He held on to his hope in the darkest of times in his life. I don't know if you know much about what was happening in his life at that time historically, but he was struggling with a lot of attacks from all sides, from within the group of people that were his close advisors, from the government, from his friends and loved ones. And they weren't necessarily always malicious attacks, but there was a lot of question around whether he should support certain movements that he was moving towards, and whether he should stand for justice in the way that he was. And so he really had to trust his inner compass. He really had to rely upon his sense of hope coming from a deeper well than just what the outside world would show him or would offer. And so I think it's really powerful to read the words that he actually said in the last few hours of his life. Of course, not knowing that was about to be the end of his life, he said, "Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. I don't know what will happen now. I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. All of this has made me think about the power of words to shape our world and our perspective and our experience and our future. And the words of Dr. King and how they live on now and how much they are needed now, maybe more than ever. And, you know, it's made me ask the question, what is the language of hope? We're writing this book of hope. What is the language of hope? What are the words that we use to define our hope? And what are the words that we use to speak to one another in order to speak that hope into existence, in order to cloak our lives in gratitude? In the Bible, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that's what I'm asking us this week to consider. Let's consider together as we write our daily 5 and our weekly reason to hope. What words are we using? What language are we using to speak to ourselves and to speak to our friends and loved ones? And perhaps most importantly, to speak to the people we don't know. What words do we use internally as we observe others? Are our words of judgment? Are they words of grace? Are we extending love? Or are we telling ourselves a different story about the people we don't know? A story that would prevent us from extending grace, prevent us from hoping, and prevent us from finding gratitude. So I think that while we celebrate the legacy of Dr. King, it's really important to remember that we're not talking about empty words. He said a lot of beautiful things, but his words were words of action. And so while we know that actions speak louder than words, we also know that words determine actions, and words are the seeds that form the roots of our actions. And if our life were a movie, it would still have a script. And the thing is, we have a role in determining what that story is. And that's what writing the Book of Hope is all about. And so I want to thank you all for being on this journey with me. I am learning alongside you. It's not easy. And sometimes we don't feel hopeful. And sometimes we can't think of one reason to be thankful, perhaps. I know that there is so much suffering right now in the world, and each of us are struggling. And I want to acknowledge that. And so I invite you to participate in this practice because we're here for each other. We're creating a community. Over time, we are training our brains to follow our hearts. And there's a deep wellspring of love in our hearts. I love the verse in Psalms where the psalmist says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord." Let's work on that together. Let's write this book of hope together. Let's talk to each other about it. You can tweet at Root and Vine News. You can comment in the feed. I posted some reflections today at rootandvinenews.com. I'm going to be doing that every Monday, and I will be back here next Monday to chat with you. We're going to have some special guests coming up, but for now, I just want to thank you again. Let us use our words this week to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly. Thank you. Be well. God bless.